Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I of course am just another heavy metal maniac, and today I am very excited to bring you all yet another discography ranking. Today we're going to be ranking all of the studio albums from California brutal / technical death metal veterans, Deeds of Flesh, one of the big names to come out of that whole big brutal death metal explosion of the mid-90s. And frankly, one of the best. These guys are one of the most consistently awesome bands, not just in brutal death metal, but in just like death metal in general, in my opinion. So yeah, this was a difficult discography to rank, honestly, because like I said, this band, they're very consistent for the most part. They just are always bringing you just pummeling riffs and vicious drumming, disgusting low guttural vocals, pretty much all the trademarks you expect from brutal death metal, but also they throw in all those technical elements, and I just really love this band. And like I said, this was a difficult discography to rank because, again, grossly consistent band. So today we're going to be ranking, like I said, all of their studio albums, of which there are 9. We do not count EPs or demos or compilations or any of that stuff in these rankings. We only count the studio releases. And yeah, really, that's all I gotta say. Without further ado, enough of my ramblings, let's just get right into this ranking. So of course we are starting at the bottom of the pack, and so coming in at number 9 is Of What's to Come, released in 2008. Now, I don't dislike this album by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is a pretty damn good album. But unfortunately, of course, in these rankings, one album has to come last, and unfortunately for this album, it's this one. This album definitely marks a bit of a shift in Deeds of Flesh's sound, because this is not as brutal as their earlier material. This is definitely leans way heavier into the more tech death side of things. The production on this is a little bit more kind of clean and polished, like you would expect from kind of a more modern tech death band. So yeah, definitely a bit of a shift, because the next 2 albums after this were also definitely way more on the technical side rather than the brutal side. But this is still brutal. It still brings, you know, just heavy pummeling riffs and stuff, and there's some really killer songs on this album. The song Eradication Pods is killer. The title track is really good, which, by the way, that's another trend with this band. Their title tracks are usually consistently awesome. Century of the Vital, I like that song a lot. Like I said, I think this is honestly a pretty damn good album. It's just not as standout to me as their other albums. And again, you know, one album had to come last. It was really between this album and the album previous. I kind of went with this one, though, just because, again, that shift, it is a bit drastic, and it was a bit of a, like, okay, it did take a bit of getting used to, because, again, this band, when they started out, were just flat out brutal for most of their career, but then this is definitely, again, much more on the technical side, not as brutal, but still brutal, definitely. I do still really like this album. I would return to it, but Of What's to Come, it is my least favorite out of this band's catalog, so it lands at number 9. Coming in now at number 8, it is Crown of Souls, released in 2005. This album and Of What's to Come, to me, are kind of interchangeable. I feel very similarly about each of them. Now, Crown of Souls, granted, isn't necessarily like... It's still... I think Crown of Souls is much more closer to Deeds of Flesh's original sound. It's, again, just kind of that... More on the brutal side rather than the technical side. And again, there's some really killer songs on here, like Hammer Forged Blade is an awesome song. This Macabre Fetish, I think, is really good. Crimson Offering, I think, is a killer song. Yeah, so Crown of Souls, the reason it just lands at number 8 is just because this album just doesn't grab me as much as some of their other releases. Again, kind of like with Of What's to Come, it's just like, you know, some albums are naturally just going to end up, you know, at the bottom of the pack, and this is one album, unfortunately, kind of lands there. It doesn't have as many standout moments to me as some of their other albums, but I do still really like this album. I would return to it. And this definitely, again, was kind of their, I guess, last, like, traditional Deeds of Flesh album, because, again, after this, they shifted to more of the technical side. I do like this album. The songs I mentioned are absolutely killer. I would return to it, but it's not dead last, but it is second to last. Again, it's kind of interchangeable with Of What's to Come for me. But yeah, Crown of Souls, good album, just not the best, so that's the reason it lands at number 8. Coming in at number 7, it is Portals to Canaan, released in 2013. This is definitely a natural progression from Of What's to Come, I feel like, because this, again, is much more on kind of the technical side than the brutal side. Again, still has its brutal moments, like, there are still pummeling, brutal, heavy moments on this. There's still very much stuff in here that feels like, you know, early brutal death metal like Suffocation, you know, stuff like that. And again, some absolutely killer songs on here. Rise of the Vervum Juggernaut, I think, is a really killer song. Xenovirus is an awesome song. Orphans of Sickness, I like that song. Overall, I really like this album. It is a good album, and in terms of like technical death metal, I think this is a really, really good technical death metal album. But again, the shift, again, it's kind of the whole shift thing, like, because this is, again, much more on the technical side than the whole brutal side. Because this band, when they started, again, they were just flat out nasty and disgusting, and we'll get to those albums, but yeah, this is, again, a little bit more clean, a little bit more produced, a little bit more polished, but overall, still a really decent album. This was their final album with founding guitarist and vocalist Erik Lindemark, who he sadly passed away in 2018. Very tragic loss for the death metal community, obviously there. But yeah, this album, I think it is I think it is a really good album. Again, it's just number 7 because there's others I like more. But yeah, I would return to this one. And again, it is the songs I mentioned are killer. And again, I think it is a good album. It's just number 7 because an album had to land at number 7. And taking the number 6 spot, it is their newest and I assume probably their final studio album to date, Nucleus, released in 2020. So this was their first album after the tragic passing of Erik Lindemark, although his writing is still very much present on the album. This was the first album where Jacoby Kingston, longtime bassist, had to take over on vocal duties. Lots and lots of extra outside help on this album, though. There are tons of guest vocalists and guest musicians. Like, you have Decrepit Bill and Matt Sotelo, both from Decrepit Birth, Luke LeMay from Gorguts, Corpse Grinder, John Gallagher from Dying Fetus, Frank Mullen from Suffocation, Maddie Way from Disgorge, Rob Coca from Disavowed. Again, tons of guest stars on this album, to which I would say, honestly, again, losing such an integral member like Erik Lindemark, you definitely, I understand having to, you know, fill that void is an extremely difficult task. But I feel like this album is just kind of overly bloated with guest stars, a lot of whom don't really just stand out from one another, because again, I feel like most of these guys have a very similar style, because again, they're all, you know, like, brutal death metal guys, so naturally they're going to have a similar style, but yeah, I just feel like that's my main issue kind of with this album. I feel like it is just kind of too loaded with guest stars, but the songs are absolutely killer. Like, dude, Alien Scourge is a kick-ass song, Ascension Vortex is awesome. Well, excuse me, the title track, again, that song absolutely rips. Overall, I really like the songwriting on this album. I think this is kind of a great send-off for this band, I suppose, because I don't really see this band continuing, like, to release studio material, at least without Erik. But yeah, Nucleus, I think this is, as a final kind of send-off to this band, I think it is a really, really good album. Again, a bit bloated with guest stars, and, because honestly, Jacoby's vocals on their own, I think he sounds pretty good, honestly. Like, I don't think they necessarily needed all this extra outside help, but they got it anyway. But yeah, this album I think is really good. I would return to it. It's just number 6 again, just because there's others I like more, but I do like this album. Again, if it might be higher if it didn't have as many guest stars on it. Alright, we reached roughly the halfway point now. Coming in at number 5, it is Path of the Weakening, released in 1999. Out of this band's early material, like their 90s material, I think that this is definitely the weakest album, mainly just kind of on the production front. Production-wise, I don't think it's as strong, it's not as clear, it's kind of missing a bit of the heft in the recording, I feel like. But again, these songs on this album, I think, are absolutely awesome. Like, dude, Indigenous to the Appalling, again, the title track is absolutely killer, Summarily Killed, I Die on My Own Terms is a vicious barn burner of a song. I really like the songwriting on this album. This was also their first album with 2 guitarists. Erik just handled the guitar duties on pretty much every other release up until this point. But this was their first album with 2 guitarists, which I think is kind of cool. It kind of adds in a little bit of different dynamics to this band. But yeah, again, if the production was better, I could probably make it a little bit higher. But again, to me, it's just not as clear. It lacks the heft in the recording that I feel like Beats of Flesh kind of needs for the most part. And again, out of their 90s material, I think this is probably the weakest, or well, it is, in my opinion, the weakest. But yeah, overall, I do still really, really like this album. I think this album absolutely rips. Again, the songs are awesome. All the tracks I mentioned are awesome. It's just number 5 for me because, again, an album kind of had to land at number 5. And again, if production was better, this album could be higher, but unfortunately we got the production that we got, so it is number 5 on my list. And taking the number 4 spot, it is Inbreeding the Anthropophagy, released in 1998. I almost said that wrong. I had to practice a few times to get the title right. Inbreeding the Anthropophagy, yep, I got it. Okay, almost messed up there. This, as a follow-up to this band's debut, which we'll get to, I think this is a really solid follow-up. Production, again, not as clear as I would like necessarily, but I think it is a bit of a step up, or I guess technically Path of the Weakening would be a step down, but because this album came before, but whatever. I think the production of this album is serviceable, but again, it could have been a little bit better maybe. But I love the song right now. This album. I think the songs, again, they're brutal, they're groovy, they're technical, they're just vicious and nasty and gross. Let's see, tracks like, Feeding Time are absolutely killer. The title track is a lot of fun. Infecting Them with Falsehood is honestly one of my favorite Deeds of Flesh songs. Ritual Battle, I think, is a really killer song too. Yeah, overall, I really dig this album. This is a really, again, fun, gross, nasty, dark, brutal album. And again, in terms of like late 90s, like brutal death metal, when again this genre was really, really starting to take off, I think this is definitely one of the standout releases from 1998 for sure. And again, I do really like this album and I would return to it. It's a lot of fun to listen to, but it's just number 4 for me. It doesn't quite crack the top 3, although it is very, very close. But yeah, Inbreeding the Anthropophagy, I really like this album. It's number 4. Taking the number 3 spot, we are now entering the top 3. It is Mark of the Legion, released in 2001. Holy shit, this album rips. I absolutely love this album. I noticed in this album, there's kind of a slightly more, like, just kind of old school death metal influence. Like, again, it's still brutal as shit. It's still technical. They throw in all those technical riffs and stuff. But there's a bit more of that old school death metal out in this album. Like, there's some kind of moments in here where it gets a little bit more like melodic, but again, not like pretty melodic, like, ooh, you see a nice ballad. Like, no, it's still like death metal melodies, but it's noticeable. But it really adds like a kind of a unique flavor to this album, I feel like, and it definitely makes these songs stand out for sure. And speaking of the songs, they are all absolutely killer. There's not a single dud on this album. But dude, songs like Cleansed by Fire, An Eternity of Feasting and Brawling, again, the title track, because this band's title tracks are all absolutely killer. Fulfilled in Warfare is an amazing song. Master of Murder is amazing too. I really, really, really like this album. This is a huge standout in their catalog for me. I liked the production on it. To me, the production was definitely a step up from Path of the Weakening, honestly. And again, there's more kind of like old school death metal moments that kind of pop up on this album. Really gives this album a unique edge in their catalog. Yeah, Mark of the Legion, I absolutely love this album. I will be jamming this album again. Who knows, maybe I'll jam it right after this video's done. Who knows, I don't know, there's a lot of albums I could jam. But this album is absolutely killer and you should listen to it if you have not. Mark of the Legion, absolute ripping album. And taking the number 2 spot on my list, it is Reduced to Ashes, released in 2003. Oh my god, I love this album. This is, like, seriously, like, peak brutal death metal. I don't have a single gripe with this album. I think it is a flawless, perfect album throughout. The production on it, crisp, but just devastating at the same time. And every single song on here is absolutely amazing. The title track, Avowed Depraved is a banger. Empyrean, Disinterred, Archaic Heap, which is just a great song title. And the final track, The Endurance, the longest song they ever did, 11 minutes of just fucking riffs and chugs and amazing songwriting. This band wrote an 11-minute song, but it kept my interest throughout the whole thing. I was not bored once while listening to it. I love that song. It is absolutely fucking amazing. I really, really, really love this album. I kinda struggled between this and my number 1, but ultimately I went with my number 1, obviously. But I mean, dude, this album is just absolutely killer. There's not a single thing I dislike about this album. I will happily return to it. Reduced to Ashes, it's an absolutely amazing album. It is my number 2. I absolutely love it. And finally, we reach my number 1, which is none other than their 1996 debut album, Trading Pieces. I absolutely love this album. Every single song on here is a ripper. When it comes to like old school brutal death metal, like again that whole mid 90s death metal, brutal death metal, this is kind of what I want it to sound like. Like when I listen to that whole scene, that whole style, this is kind of what I want, because this kind of has everything I like about that style. It has the production, which is a little bit muddy, but it's like muddy in a good way. Like the production of this album, I think it really adds to the album. It has all the riffs, all the amazing songwriting. It has all the brutality. It has those amazing, vocals. That's kind of one thing I haven't really mentioned throughout this video, come to think of it. The vocal dichotomy between Jacoby and Eric, which, yeah, Eric just did the low, nasty gutturals, and Jacoby would throw in like the high shrieks occasionally, and they both complement the music so well. And again, I don't really necessarily like to say that a band peaked on their debut, because I feel like that kind of implies that everything after that is kind of downhill, which is not the case. Again, this band has nothing even close to a bad release. Everything by this album is killer. But I feel like they just came out swinging, and they kind of perfected their formula on their first album. Like, again, every single song in here is amazing. Born Then Torn Apart, the title track, Hunting Humans, Acid Troops is amazing, Erected on Stakes. Yeah, I absolutely love this album. This is, again, this is like a perfect mid-90s brutal death metal album. One of the best to come out of that whole scene, that whole style. This is such a landmark album too. Like, I think this album was very influential as well, because you'll still find tons of bands that are trying to, copy the sound that was on this album, which granted, yeah, it started with Suffocation, sure, but a lot of bands also ape Deeds of Flesh, without a doubt. And this is just, again, insanely important landmark album in brutal death metal, one of my favorites in that whole style. I absolutely love this album. Everything about it is perfect. This is like a 10 out of 10. Perfect album, honestly. I absolutely love it. Trading Pieces, it is my #1 Deeds of Flesh album. And that concludes my Deeds of Flesh ranking. I love this band. This was difficult to go over, but ultimately it was very, very fun, and I got to listen to some really killer death metal albums. So, if you made it to the end of this video, you are awesome, and I appreciate you. Do consider leaving a like if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, do you agree with my thoughts on these albums? Do you disagree with my rankings? Let me know down in the comment section. If you're not subscribed, do consider subscribing, because I do have a lot more content coming your way. And, well, that about does it. I am just another Heavy Metal Maniac. See you all sometime in the future. In the meantime, I hope you take care and have a great day. So long.